Hey there, welcome to Authentically Raw. I'm your host, Jamie Darris.
Carol Latta, welcome to the Authentically Raw podcast. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm so good, so excited to chat with you.
So am I. So first, I'm going to do a short introduction and then I'll let you tell us more about yourself. But you are a play and mindset coach and the founder of The Playful Warrior. And tell us a little bit about what that means.
So, I started the Playful Warrior in 2020, and it really came from a place of my own healing. I actually had no intention to be a business owner. I had been working in public relations for 10 years. Was very play deprived, was unaware of that though, but was in this spot where I was really unhappy in this job and was very much a perfectionist, people pleaser, high achiever, a lot of burnout. I would work really long days and felt really disconnected from myself. And so then I started going to therapy in about 2018. I started doing inner child healing. And it was so powerful for me. And for anyone that doesn't know, essentially, your inner child is a part of your subconscious mind that is still innocent and childlike. And essentially, we are living out our beliefs that our inner children have developed since the age of, like, especially from up until 7 years old. And so I started diving in and connecting with little me, this version of me who had felt unloved and abandoned as a child. And it was really powerful. It was such a powerful experience to do inner child healing. I knew it was a game changer in my healing journey. However, it was really heavy. Going through childhood trauma a lot, it just felt really heavy. And in especially 2019, I was kind of going through that dark night of the soul where everything was kind of falling apart. Like, I had a serious relationship end. I had health issues with epilepsy. I had a cockroach infestation. So basically, I was getting all these signals, at least I felt, from the universe that was like, what you're doing is not working. And and so it was just a really heavy time. And then the pandemic started in March, like especially March 2020. I was let go of my job. I was very surprised because I had just been offered like a VP position. So I was really on this like corporate ladder, but for the first time, I just felt like so much peace
Right.
and so much like just connection to self. Like, it was like, oh, could just breathe now. There's this sign of relief that like now I had this chance to actually do something I wanted to do. And so this also meant I had more time for me. And so it was like, okay, I'm just gonna like enjoy myself now and just like spend some time on my own healing. And at the time, again, I was doing inner child healing therapy, but it was heavy. And so my therapist had suggested you need to play more, like you need to find joy and do things in a more lighthearted way. And so I was really excited by that idea, but I just didn't know, how do adults play? What does play mean for adults? And that was really unfamiliar for me because as a perfectionist, I was so competitive. Any play I did was very like competitive dance. Or for me, for example, I wouldn't do art because I was like, oh, well, I'm not good at that by societal standards. I would only do things I'm good at. So I realized, like, wow, okay, I'm actually not really connected to play. I don't know how to just be in the moment and follow my curiosity and spontaneity and not put this pressure on myself to achieve or to produce. So I was realizing, okay, not connected to that. Sounds interesting. Sounds like it could be healing. So I looked for resources. Just how do adults play? And I found a lot of science around play, which was exciting. And so I agreed. But again, there was no like how to. There was only like really for children. And then I kind of was like, okay, well, I'm just going to do this for me. Again, this was not a business idea at all. So I started just playing on my own. I think because I was let go of that job, I just had more of connection to self and I was connecting with little me. I would start every day like writing to my inner child, looking at photos of little me and kind of just getting inspiration of how to play. So instead of doing competitive dance, I started doing like sillier dances, or I started exploring art, but I had that critical voice in my head. So I started doing art with a blindfold on so that I would let go of that critical voice and just learn to have fun again. And so I was doing something playful every day. And then I just kind of noticed within a couple months, wow, like I feel like a completely different person. I feel
Mhm.
like so much more creative, and I wouldn't have said I was creative before. Like I felt really creative and healthier and happier and just like felt the best I really ever had. And so then I was like, "Oh, okay, I think I need to bring play to adults. I think this is my mission because especially in the pandemic, like play deprivation was a real thing. Like it was such a hard, heavy time. And just looking around, I was like, wow, this is what adults really need. Play isn't just for kids, it's for everyone. And so that was kind of like the motivation for starting the Playful Warrior. And then for me as well, it was like, okay, I had this idea to be a play coach, but I was this like professional PR executive, and now I'm going to be a play coach. Like there was so much anxiety, self doubt, like all of the inner critic really came forward. And so for me, that was when I also really got interested in mindset coaching. And I studied this conscious mind that year. I became a hypnotherapist. And like that mindset piece really helped me become confident enough to put myself out there. So then I realized that, like, okay, for me, the mix is play and mindset. And that's what I want to combine and support people with. And so now with the Playful Warrior, I'm helping people through play and mindset to reconnect back to play, to heal perfectionism, and to, yeah, really like return back to little them, this sense of wonder and curiosity and spontaneity so they can achieve their goals, but in this playful way that is more confident and connected to self.
I love your story, and I think so many people can relate to so many parts of it. And and the question that it just poses for me right off the bat is, how many people are that, if we call it play deprived, and have no idea, but don't understand how much of an impact that makes on their health, their happiness, their productivity at home, what it does, how it's hurting their relationships. I mean, there's so many ways that it hurts us when we're play deprived. But I do agree sometimes it's that word play that we have to kind of create a new mindset towards, because so many people think of it as like, oh, it's like acting like a kid. I don't have time for that. I've got stuff to do. I have, all this. I love that you brought up like the achieve and the producing, and so many of us feel that if we're not achieving, and producing things, then we're wasting our time, or we're not valuable, or, we're not showing our worth. And if you're playing, if you're doing things, then that's, going to take all that other stuff away. You're never going to achieve those goals, or, show up how you really need to. And it's just the opposite. And I think it takes more effort in the beginning to create that new mindset and understand, okay, something's got to give. I mean, obviously, you had to make a choice, but it was also the choice wasn't yours in a way when you're let go, but there was that, if you want to call it a breaking point, where you could have dove right back into the same sort of work. You could have thrown yourself in another company doing the same thing, running yourself ragged, but yet you felt this relief. And luckily you'd done some mindset stuff and inner child work. Talk about perfect timing, 2 years before. And so it obviously channeled something that it's like, wow, now is the right time. It's almost, to me, when I hear your story, it's like you getting into therapy, knowing that something's off, and the work that you did up until when you got let go. It's like you were prepared just enough to, okay, I'm already feeling the benefits. Now to make, just keep giving this to myself. And then so much has sprung and budded and blossomed from that. So I want to talk a lot about that stuff too. But before we go a little bit further, because so many people in their mind, even there's two things I want to quick touch on, and it's a little bit more about inner child healing and inner child work, what it actually is, because that can be kind of scary for people. Like, I'm an adult, I'm fine, my childhood, like whatever's there, it's like I don't need to go back, I don't need to revisit things. And I think there's just a lot of misconception around what it is. But it's so highly beneficial. So I want people to understand a little bit more what inner child work is. So that's one thing I want to touch on. And then again, how play there's the adult version of play and how maybe it's just a reframe in our mind because, whether it's your interests or what lights you up, what gets you in the flow. Like, so I think throughout this conversation, if people could take that word play and make it mean, whatever's meaningful to them, like connect with that. So either way you want to start is if you want to hit on the inner child stuff first, or if you want to take the word play and maybe talk about, what does play really look like in an adult life, to different people, whether you're a CEO or you're a stay-at-home mom or you're somewhere in the middle or whatever. So I'll let you kind of take take away and start wherever.
Yeah, so I think with play, I totally agree that everyone's version of play is different. So we all have different things that light us up or that make us feel curious because I think there's a lot of misconception around play that like play has to be this like really high energy thing you're doing that you're just like laughing, like you're laughing your ass off, like you're just like so wild. And some people are more like introverted or don't have as much energy. So they're like, oh, I guess I'm not playful or it's not possible for me. But yeah, being playful for me means that you're connected with your curiosity. So this could just be like going on a walk, but like turning a different way, just getting curious, not being so much in that, yeah, like achievement focused mentality or where there's a lot of pressure on yourself to do something the right or wrong way. Because one of the key components of play is that there's actually no outcome. So to know, like, okay, if I'm like, maybe I'm playing this game right now, this board game, and if I'm only gonna have fun if I like win, and if I'm gonna have a terrible time if I lose, then you're really getting more into perfectionism and not really in that authentic, playful spirit. But if you can just play a game and right, there is some kind of goal you're going towards, but if you don't care so much about the outcome, then you are connected to play. So for me, it's like, how can I find moments of curiosity or spontaneity or just let go of this need to control and get a certain outcome, like be more open to playing with life. And so that can look really different for everyone. For some of us, like, yeah, we might want to explore art. Honestly, exploring art again was so healing for me and healing this perfectionism because I thought I wasn't an artist because I like quote unquote suck at art by societal standards. But like by me just learning that, like, oh, I can just like draw on this page and it's actually so liberating to do that because I'm like freeing myself of my inner critic and this idea that I can only do something if it's a certain way. And then it's like, no, this just gets to be self expression. This gets to be just like liberated. I'm worthy of that. Doesn't have to look a certain way. Like that was so healing for me. So I love doing stuff like art. I love dancing. Yeah, I love like walking or just even like putting your feet on the grass, like going in the backyard, just like connecting with the earth. So there's so many ways to be playful. But a huge thing for me, especially as a business owner, was play is not just about like activities, it's about a mindset. And so like introducing the playful mindset to what you do. And I think as adults, we all need this. The playful mindset is the exact opposite of perfectionism. So the playful mindset is like learning to take risks with things, learning to trust ourselves, trust our gut, and know that there's not so much pressure on things like decision making because when you make a decision, like the only way to get clarity is really just to take action and then you'll learn from that. And so the playful mindset is really about that. It's like not waiting to have something perfect. It's just like, no, I'm just going to play with this. I'm going to get information. I will learn. So that has been huge for me in my business. And like, I just enjoy things so much more because there's less pressure. And for the play skeptics out there, I always share about Albert Einstein. So Albert Einstein was like a huge advocate of play. If you look up photos of him, like he has his tongue out, he's super playful, and he was one of the greatest thinkers of all time. So it's like, yes, he actually did quote unquote fail a lot, but like they weren't really failures. It was just all learning opportunities. And like think of how successful he was. So he is just such a great representation of that playful mindset. And so I think for me, it's like even when I'm doing a task at work, it's like, how can I invite play into this? How can I make this a bit more light? How can I make this more fun? A huge one as well is for brainstorming. So whenever we're trying to like think of solutions, so often we are like head down, like hustling, like in this really stressful energy. And it's like chances are your best ideas are not going to come from that energy. It's going to come from a more open energy. And so what I love to do is like, okay, when I have like a problem or I'm trying to think of new solutions, it's like I play, but what I do is I think about ideas or solutions that make no sense at all, that are so ridiculous, that are just like so weird, that make you laugh so much because that shifts your energy. So I always say to organizations I work with, like, this is a great strategy for your brainstorms because that is shifting your state. It's shifting like your brain, like you're opening yourself up to new solutions. And it's like even what you mentioned, it's like so often we think of play and we learned it's like this waste of time that we're not being productive. But like actually by doing that, we are becoming more productive. So there's like so many benefits of play that, yeah, like they might not seem intuitive for us just with all of our conditioning that we've learned, but it's actually so helpful for our creativity, our productivity, all these things. So I think as adults, it's like, yes, find time to do things like activities that do light you up. It's so important. But also, you can bring in the playful mindset to like all the tasks you were doing as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think of how often, and I hear people say this all the time, it's like your greatest ideas are when you're in the shower or you're exercising or you're doing some kind of almost like a mindless task that you're absorbed in and you're kind of carefree. And like you said, the pressure's off. We don't have all this high pressure on us. And that is when our best ideas come to mind, or you're tinkering with something, or but then that's when you can go back to your desk or your work area or even in your relationships, like wherever, and then you can apply it. I mean, whether it's maybe you're having a problem in a relationship and then a solution or something like, oh, I feel I need to do this comes to mind when you're not grindstone, like, oh my gosh, the pressure's on, what do I do? But I think a lot of it is the world we live in. It's like we don't even allow ourselves or give ourselves the permission to just unhook and give ourselves that free time. And I love that you bring up Albert Einstein because there's such genius in what he did. And when I think of him, that is totally it. He sat around and tinkered and tried and played until he got it right. Whereas so many of us, it's like, head to the grindstone. I got to figure it out now. And if I don't on the first one, two or three tries, I'm just done and I give up. And then it's like, I mean, just think if some of our greatest thinkers and people were like that. I mean, they played and they tinkered, and I like it. Why is the word tinker coming to my head? I don't know that, but I think about just whether you're a man or a woman or whatever. Like I think of my husband, either he'll go out and tinker in the garage, but it's like that's his stress relief. But that's when you resolve things or you brainstorm, your guard is down and you're open and things can flow in, and it does put you in a mindset. When you were talking about different things of play, I think so many times too we think we have to have some structured thing. Oh, I gotta set up a game of pickleball, or I have to get all the arts and crafts supplies, or no. And one thing I've been finding now that the weather's nice around here, I will grab the dog, I'll hop on my bike. It's a 10-minute thing, and we live on a private drive, so it's maybe the whole drive is half a mile, 3/4 mile long, but it's long enough to where she can run next to me in the grass, and I race down the hill and back up a couple of times, and we race each other. And it's like I'm a kid again. Your hair's blowing in the wind, and I'm like, faster, Roxy, and we're racing, and I swear she's smiling. But
Oh,
it's those little things of like connecting. She's outside, I'm outside. It's just like, it's 10 minutes. That is play. That's a mind, whatever you want to call it. And it made me also, when you were speaking, think about how often, and it could be the home setting or a work setting, where it's the all work, no play mentality. And I hear so much lately because I grew up with the driven in my head, work hard, play hard. And I've started to reframe that, work smarter, not harder. And I don't know, I had to come up with something catchy, but it's like that incorporation of play is the way to work smarter, not harder. For
totally.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so for
and I just think with play, I just got to throw this one little thing in because as you were speaking to, I'm thinking, even if you're changed to a desk, you work that 9 to 5 or 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., whatever you're doing, could there be a time during the day where you've got some scrap papers or something around your desk and you just are lighting them up and you're with yourself and you're like, she shoots, she scores. And I mean, it's those little breaks that kids do that our body still craves them as adult that we just deny, 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 and deny. Why do we deny ourselves so much joy? So I think that's a whole nother word. I started to think that a lot too, like with the play thing. It's just a lot of it is inviting joy in and what lights me up, what brings joy in.
Yeah, and it's what's one thing that's really fascinating that I think also motivated me to start this business was just the fragility of life. And like I had an uncle who passed away like tragically in an accident one day, and it was just like that. He was gone and he was almost the age of retirement and had been waiting to his retirement to do all these trips. And it was like nothing is guaranteed. And then this really powerful book you may have heard of, The Common Regrets of the Dying. So it's like the top 5 regrets of the dying. And one of those is that I wish I'd let myself be happier and just like laugh in this silly way that was more uninhibited. Like I wish I cared less what other people thought of me. And I feel like that is just so connected to play that like when people are on their deathbed, they are just wishing that they had more fun and they let themselves be free and just like didn't worry so much what other people thought. And just like, wow, like that is what we're meant to do. We're meant to have like fun here and be joyful. And so yes, it is wild, like all this conditioning that we do have to unlearn. And then another thing you said, I really like that you brought up was connection and how you felt connected with your doggo. And it's so true that like play is such a big connector. And I know for me, like I feel like I have had past relationships that haven't worked out because there's been a lack of play. I haven't felt safe enough to be playful or like bring out my silly accent or stuff. But it's like, but my true spirit is playful and I want to do silly accents with my partner and just like be a bit weird. Like that's how I connect with people, but that can feel really vulnerable. And it's like, now my partner, like we're so silly together. We're so weird, but like it's so great because that's how you connect to people. And like even when I do corporate play sessions, it's like, yeah, bringing out that connection between teams because as humans we want belonging, we want connection, we that's why we're here ultimately. And so yeah, I think play is just such a powerful way also to feel connected with people and dogs.
For sure.
Yeah.
We have 4 kids too. And a husband.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
But so when you're saying it, it made me think of just, simple little things to get people's minds working about how to incorporate some of this, like today, right now, like snap a finger. Think of a kid though, and this will lead us into our inner child talk too. Think of a kid. They just seek joy all day long. They just want to do what makes them happy. They're running around outside until you're screaming at them to get inside for dinner, right? Or they used to be before screens, but that's another day. No, but I think in the workplace and that whole connection that we talked about is what silly little pranks or jokes or whatever do you have with coworkers that connect you? What do you have in your home? Like you said, the silly accents. And I kind of got away a little bit of that as the kids have gotten older. I need to get back to that. Well, I would talk to them with a British accent all the time. So I was young, but we always have all these accents, or we do the Boston accent after we took our trip to Boston. But that's what bonds people. And it's playful. They're so and I even think of my husband and I, we're that couple, we laugh about this all the time. Everywhere we go, we've done this forever. And we were just talking about it over the weekend. We're at the beach standing in line and there's this guy that looks like our neighbor. And we were both like, oh, that looks like Jay. But we do this everywhere we go. And I'll point to someone, who's that? And then we always relate it to somebody we know. We have this like game between the two of us and we've done it forever. And I'm like, this is weird. Like, where did this start? It's not weird, but it's fun because everybody has their lookalikes and we're always like, oh, who does that sound like, that voice? Or but it's playful and it connects you. Like that's ours, and you can find that everywhere. I don't know. So and I think that it kind of goes into that inner child. It brings out that silliness because you do look back and, what little games did you play with your best friend or the kids in the neighborhood that binded you? Was it an I Spy game? Was it an actual physical game or with your parents or caregivers or, even through nicknames, it's playful and it's connecting. And so tell us a little bit more, like in your version, because this made a huge impact. So I'm going to back up a tiny bit before I let you talk about some inner child a little bit. So I first ran across you on Instagram. I don't even really know how. And I am telling everyone, go find Kara on Instagram. You're the playful warrior on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Since a lot, I'm like, oh, what are you on there? Your skits are just like none other. I love them because you tons talk about, perfectionism, your inner critic, the self-doubt. And I came to you and obviously was drawn to you because I've struggled with a lot of that my whole life. I'm not, I think it'll always be somewhat of a struggle. I've come leaps and bounds. And a lot of that is through the inner child healing. And I signed up for your business course and have went through that. We can talk a little bit about that. But I had no idea about that we'd be doing so much of like the inner child work and things like that. And I cried a lot. You remember that, I'm sure. And the very first time I talked to you on the phone about before I was committing to your program. I don't even know if we were on the phone 30 seconds and I was crying. And it just, there was so much that I knew that I had to deal with if I wanted to say, be present on this podcast and really like, I'm coach and I absolutely love one-on-one coaching. I had a client before you and I can just, how do I say, like, it brings out my light. It lights me up, like to do that with other people. But yet I was stuck in a place where I was really struggling of putting myself out there. It was the perfectionism, the inner critic and things like that. And when we really started to do inner child work and I kind of dove into it even more because of you and your course, it just really broke down a lot of those barriers of the self-doubt, the inner critic, the perfectionism that holds so many of us back, not just in our professional lives, but in our personal lives too. So tell me kind of your experience with it and in a nutshell with people that are curious about the inner child work, what that's about.
Yeah. So I always kind of go back to this idea of that, as kids, when we first come into the world, we are curious and creative and spontaneous, right? And like, as you mentioned, like if you want to dance, you're just going to dance, you're going to move. Like you don't have that filter. You're not like looking at your body and being like, oh, look at that like roll in my stomach or, when you're really, really young. But then, things start happening. We might start going to ballet class, like comparing ourselves to the other bodies, learning this is what bodies should look like seeing the magazines, or at least in my age, I guess no more magazines maybe, but TikTok or like Instagram, social media, all this stuff, just like so many messages in media from our caretakers, from school, all these things. And so we start learning that like this is what we should and shouldn't do. This is what like the right body looks like. This is like the career path we should take. Like we just start getting all these messages and those take us away from our true self, right? And it's really actually really sad. Like I think that's why there can be a lot of grief in doing inner child work because you think about just like who you used to be, like so fully expressed
Yeah.
and playful and in the moment, and then how you get detached from that version of yourself. So if that does make you sad, that's totally normal. I mean, that made me really sad as well. And so basically, when I started doing inner child work, like I thought about like little Kara who was so playful, like I would just like run around the house, like shrieking, dancing like animals. And like now I was like, oh, this like really this different like suppressed version of myself that was really just seeking to like fit in and belong and people please so that people would like me. And it's like, okay, well, where does the people pleasing and perfectionism come from? And it's like from childhood trauma. And like trauma can be, there's like the big T, like actual really big traumatic experiences, but little t as small as like, in maybe you were in grade 1 in your art class and you were told like, oh, you can't draw on the lines or something. And like your inner child who as kids, we didn't have that ability to really critically think. We thought in black or nothing, like all or nothing, black and white. And so then we might learn like, okay, I'm not an artist. I'm not worthy of drawing. Like, I can't express myself. Like you start telling these stories or, maybe you have a parent with addiction and you think that that's because of you. if they loved you, they would stop that addiction because you don't understand. Your brain doesn't have that ability to really critically discern. So then as kids, we're developing all these beliefs. It's totally subconscious. We're not really aware of all this happening. But then you get to a point where, I was like kind of 30 and looking back and, realizing that like, wow, okay, like people pleasing, perfectionism, this is all a trauma response from when I was younger. Thinking back to little me who was so fully expressed, feeling so disconnected from her and wanting to return back to that, like knowing in my heart and soul that like I'm meant to be playful, I'm meant to enjoy life. And so for me, that's why play was such a key component of the inner child work, because yes, it was helpful what I was doing in therapy to like, uncover these stories, to think about things I went through, to start to tell like new stories about that, to realize these things weren't personal or about me and that like I could be worthy. But all the talking was great, but like I knew that in essence, like my little me wanted to just feel free and dance freely and like look weird. And, for example, like me 5 years ago, I would have never made the Instagram skits I do now. Like that would have been like, I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's so cringe. It was just like really dim my light. And so for me, it was like, no, letting my inner child just express themselves again. And so for me, I just found that like, wow, play is actually so healing for the people pleasers and the perfectionists who are trying to fit in. And it's like finding your own creative voice again. There is no right or wrong. It doesn't need to look like someone else's. Like, what is it for you? So really like finding that authenticity. Because, and again, this is so important, like you said, in business and life, like everywhere, because although we think we are consciously controlling our everyday, like 95% of what we're doing every day is coming from our subconscious mind. So maybe like the next time you get like maybe a weird comment on Instagram, it's like, and someone is saying like, oh, like, I don't know, you look ugly. Like whoever does that obviously is in a lot of pain, but like if that triggers something in you, that could be the inner child in you who's feeling not enough. And Gabor Mate gives a really good example of this, of how, say like someone came up to me and said, oh, your green hair is so ugly. Like that wouldn't impact me because I'd be like, well, I don't have green hair, so okay. But if someone said something about, you not being good enough, or,
Yeah.
something like that you actually believed about yourself, so in your subconscious mind, like that would really hurt. And so our inner child actually just impacts like everything we're doing. And even like, fear of failure, that comes from the inner child, fear of success. So if we're like a business owner who is not taking risks because we're afraid of failure, like that's actually coming from the little version of ourselves who is so scared to be, to feel like rejected because they felt that in the past. And that was so scarring. So that is a little synopsis of why inner child healing is so important.
Right. No, and I think in just having that playful mindset like we did when we were kids is so helpful, but also I think recognizing when these feelings get stirred up, it's like, okay, this is from something. The word tarnished always comes to my head because there's not like we're born feeling so confident, full of self-worth, fully validated, valued, all of these things, but it's like you can't escape getting tarnished, or a little beat up along the way in life. And it could come like I love the example of just being in the first grade and someone says something about coloring. You're not thinking that when you're a full adult, oh, this is why I hold myself back in this area. It's because of that one comment. Like you probably maybe don't even register most of the comments that are impacting you today because they're so deeply stored, but yet it was something shifted in you and you went a new way, and then you went this way and that way and that way and that way until all of a sudden you're adult and you're not who you were born to be. And it pulled you away from that true authentic self. And I think that's why it's so important to kind of go back and do some of this work to bring you back to who you truly are. Because if you're, acting through all of these, insecurities and fears that we've kind of developed from all the big T's and little T's throughout life, then we're not really living for one. And we are holding ourselves back from so much, not just joy and happiness, but from what each of us just has to offer in this world. Truly. Yeah.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about some of your different programs and things then, and how, you kind of you do a great job of let's talk about Instagram for a second. I think everything is just so relatable because when you go back and forth with these people, it's so spot on of the conversations that could be like in our head and in what we say, and it's just with the perfectionism and the way the real world is. And when you have these skits, it's like I find myself laughing at how ridiculous it is, but even more so it's like, but we all buy into it. And so how does someone, how what's a good first step to kind of, if we are dealing with this heavy inner critic and maybe it's the people pleasing and the perfectionism, and it is holding us back from things in our life. Like, what's a good first step?
Yeah. So I think a good first step would be to name your inner critic. So
Mm.
giving them a name, distancing yourself from them, just like knowing that, oh, wow, this isn't actually me. Like, this is the voice of schooling, caretakers, media, just like knowing that, like, oh, like I'm not a bad person. This is not actually me. I can make this a bit playful, give them a silly name like Magda or something. I don't know, whatever name comes to you.
Yeah.
So that when that voice comes, you're like, oh, that's just Magda.
Yeah.
And like I know that's really helped me and made it a bit more playful as well. But I think also it's like so often, especially maybe as you do personal development work, you've started reading books and that voice still comes back and you're like, oh, something's wrong with me. And you start feeling shame, like, why is this still happening? Why is this voice here? It's like knowing that there's nothing wrong with you. It's so normal. It's just the way our brains work. And so it's like just being like, okay, nothing's wrong with me. This is normal. But yeah, there's tools we can use to navigate it better. And so I think a first step would be name your inner critic and think about like, who does the voice sound like? Does it sound like my dad, like an old teacher, like the shows I used to watch? Like, thinking about that, getting some clarity, and then, yeah, maybe even drawing a little picture of them as well.
Yeah. Very helpful. So tell me a couple, or just, what exactly in your business, like different things that you have to offer, because I mean, just even in the course that I took through you, we did a little bit of hypnosis, we did a bit in child work, we studied and talked about like perfectionism, but then we talked about, like being bold and going after things, whether it's business. I mean, you can apply all this stuff obviously anywhere in your life because we all have our stuff or our struggles or areas that we get stuck in. And these are tools that can be used, in any area of our lives. And so, yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, so I have a group coaching program called Wild and Worthy, and this is for anyone who is doing the inner child healing work, who identifies with the perfectionism, the people pleasing, the self doubt, and who is looking to heal their inner child, but in a more lighthearted, playful way. So in the program, we do lots of play. There's a lot of community connection, letting yourself be seen in front of other people and do things that might be vulnerable, but it's like so freeing in the process, and everyone is so kind and loving. But then we also have the mindset piece. So we'll do things like hypnosis, and I weave in different forms of like neurolinguistic programming and just learning to rewire your subconscious mind to start to tell more empowering stories that help you, yeah, be in the driver's seat, feel more confident. And so it's a really fun experience. I love doing Wild and Worthy. So if you're interested in that, you can get on the wait list on my website, theplayfulwarrior.com. But then if you are a business owner like Jamie, so if you're like a coach, a creative entrepreneur, or looking to start a business, I have a program called the Playful Business Collective. And so we do similar work to Wild and Worthy. So there is play, because it's so important that entrepreneurs are taking time to play and fill up their cup. Like, you want to show up for your clients in that space of where you are taking care of yourself, you have energy to give them, but you are also tapping into your creativity and self-expression. There's mindset coaching. Then we also have a weekly business strategy session as well to help you in your business. Because a lot of my experience before doing the Playful Warrior was business oriented. I managed a lot of it, big accounts like Booking.com, Los Angeles Tourism, like a lot of business experience and PR experience that then I bring to the business program. So if you want to learn about that, we'll be starting in July 2024. Or if you're listening to this a different time, you can hop on the wait list as well on my website. And then, very exciting, coming up for those who are listening in May, June 2024, I have a free event happening June 12th and June 13th called Play to Prosper. So this is for business owners, soon to be business owners, creatives who are looking to move beyond the anxiety, procrastination, self-doubt so you can take more bold action in your business and have more fun in your business. So it's free. You can sign up on my website, theplayfulwarrior.com. It's going to be really, really amazing, and super excited for that. And then, yeah, I would say follow me on Instagram at The Playful Warrior. And then also, I have some other ways to play on my website. If you go to ways to play, like I have a small offer that's like $5, just like a playful morning routine you can do, or I have like a guided play date you can do with your inner child. So that you'll find other offers there as well.
Amazing. And yes, when your whole Instagram account, I think just even scrolling in there and being aware of if you resonate with any of that is such a huge first step, because I think a lot of people do feel like, oh, I'm alone. I'm the only one that deals with this in my head, and so many people do. And there's so much that we can do to recreate a new mindset and incorporate just more lightheartedness and more joy and more play into our lives, and the benefits. I mean, I know I've already said this, but it doesn't stop. It enters every area of your life, and I think a lot of it is what it all comes down to. For me, the big word is connection. It's number one, that connection again with yourself, like you had when you were small. And we lose along the way as the years pass, but it's connecting with people, whether that's just in your intimate relationships, friends, in the workplace, just everywhere. And that's what we're wired for. And it's about, when people talk so much about, rewiring your mind, and we think of it, there's so many ways to think of it. And I think it's getting back to your own wiring is what a lot of it is, truly. So yes. Is there anything else you want to add?
Hmm. Yeah, I would just say that like so often we tell stories as if they're black and white. Like, I'm not playful, this isn't possible for me. And just like reminding yourself that you can tell a new story. And if you are feeling like, wow, I'm so disconnected with play, like that's great. She was able to turn it around, but that's just not possible for me. It's like starting to shift your language and noticing like I'm learning to play. Starting to just like be more open-minded, because I really believe it is possible for everyone to reconnect with play no matter what your situation has been. And so yeah, it was once like really hard for me. I know I told the story in 2020 of like when I was like, oh, my job, I had that inner peace, I was able to start playing. But I can even remember a few years before that being in this dance group, and it was like 200 people in Toronto, age 9 to 93. So it was like really cool, intergenerational, all backgrounds. And yeah, we were learning this 30-minute dance, and that was more what I did. I did more like organized kind of dance routines. It was super fun. But for one of the warm-ups, they were trying us to get in more of like our uninhibited side, and they asked us to gallop around like horses in the gymnasium. And like that was like so uncomfortable with me. I was like, I absolutely do not want to do this. This is so weird. Like, it was just like so not my vibe at all at the time. But then I saw these women who were like 60s, 70s, 80s, one in her 90s. And then they just like kind of linked arms and started galloping. Some were making horse sounds. And it was like, oh my gosh, they look so happy. They look so free. And it's like, I want that. I don't feel free at
Yeah.
all. So that was always like, I kind of imagined them as well. I'm just like, gosh, I just want that freedom. But I share that story just because if you are feeling like, oh my gosh, that's so not what I would want to do, like I felt that as well. And I really do believe with time and just showing up for you and your inner child, you can find your version of play. And I think it's really important you do, because as we've seen as people who are on their deathbed, like that is the one thing they wish they had more of. So just don't delay finding your play and your version of joy anymore.
Oh, I agree. It makes me just think of how, we're conditioned to this way of thinking that, oh, I can't do that or whatever. I can't have that. But isn't freedom like worth just letting all that stuff go? I mean, I think it's more of like, it's or it's harder to stick with that rigid way of being, right? That takes more work. Like,
It
isn't it just easier to
does.
let go? That's freedom, right?
Yeah, but it's unfamiliar. And so
Yeah.
like our brain loves our brain loves the familiar. Our brain loves the familiar. So even though it's like harder for us to do and stay miserable, like our brain would prefer that because it feels safer. So it's like unlearning that and learning that like, oh, actually joy and play can be safe. It'll feel scary at first though.
Yes. And not that this is necessarily play related, but this made me think of this. So someone must need to hear it because it popped in my mind. But I think it's in Jen Sincero's book, You Are a Badass. She talks about smokers, for instance, how it's more effort to actually smoke. I mean, you have to, go buy the cigarettes, you have to excuse yourself and go outside. It takes up your money, it takes up your time, it takes, it's like it's less effort just to stop. I mean, sure, there's that internal whatever, that battle, that struggle, but it kind of reminds me of play. It takes more effort, like not to do it because you're filling yourself with all these extra to-dos, really, and it's the internal struggle that we all have to really finally be like, okay, it's that letting go is I think what a lot of us, maybe struggle with. I don't know if that analogy even, but it popped in my head. I know somebody needs to hear that, right?
Oh, it's so true. I love it. Yeah.
But, well, thank you so much, Kara. And I will put everything in the show notes. So if anyone wants to, for sure, at least come to the 3D June 12th and June 13th, who doesn't want to play? And it's Eastern Standard Time, I noticed, 12 to 1:30. So it's like lunchtime. Everybody needs a break right around then anyway. And
1,000%.
absolutely. Yes. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. This has been a fabulous conversation. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for listening to Authentically Raw. I'm excited to announce that my book, Results Daily Planning and Self Development, is for sale on Amazon and on my website at jamiebarris.com. It's the perfect blend of a daily planner with hourly schedule. It has wellness journal prompts to help you develop yourself personally, professionally, and relationally while strengthening your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health and well-being. It's the ultimate life planner. It guides you along your journey to design and manifest the life you desire with clarity and confidence, one day at a time. Also on my website, jamiebarris.com, you can click on the freebie tab and download a free ebook. It is the best of the best of the planner and wellness prompts. It has goal setting, habit formation, vision boards, you name it, it's in there. About 50 or so pages. Download it for free and it is yours. If you leave a review of this podcast or the book, snap a screenshot, email it to me, jamie@jamiebarris.com, and you will receive a free coaching session. As always, I'm rooting for you. Be real, be raw, be authentic.